Please go ahead. Anybody would like to say something? Yes, Mr. Bedi. Mr. Bedi has played a very important part in standardization, which is very, very important from the Ministry of Information Technology. Many of you know he has been the pioneer responsible for development of standards in the field of telemedicine. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon and thanks for a very interesting presentation. See, my is not exactly a question. I thought, some of the issues which came up, I will just try to put some more light. No, Dr. Lavanya has talked about a requirement of more than 100,000 centers. I'm very happy to say that from under some program there has been thought that we will somehow reach those 100,000 centers. Under our e-governance program, you see, when we are setting a community service centers, telehealth is one of the agenda. And it is again on a entrepreneur basis, you see, so that sustainability also we are trying to build. And I think this is where, question is, can the health be in just public sector? No. When this model has to work, again corporate sector has to come in. You see, any public-private partnership like this, you see, I think Dr. Lavanya again touched a very right this thing. Government support is coming in the form of infrastructure. Very soon, gentlemen, broadband is reaching every nook and corner of India. Very high bandwidth availability is going to be there. Already this has been announced as a year of broadband. So once that happens, again, you see, at every village or at least at every health center will have bandwidth, uplink as well as downlink, of course, in a very large scale, but a bandwidth, uplink bandwidth, which again will trigger this activity right at the grassroots levels. So this is on this this thing. But you see, I have one particular I think question to Dr. Ganpati. So how do the specialists, especially from the corporate sector hospitals, how they will they are taking this particular issue? This is one of the major issue which we are bothered with when we are going to talk about 100,000 centers getting connected. From where we are going to source these specialists?
It's a very practical and down-to-earth question. Ultimately, at the end of the day, vitamin M is what drives everybody forward. So unless there is vitamin M, you are absolutely right. I have found it difficult to get specialists in my own hospital to come all the time, every time. So there must be a mechanism ultimately where it's a fee-for-service basis in the long-term growth. The other thing is, it's very easy to show lovely photographs like this, but in the real world, things are different. There is no point. Most of us feel very frustrated at times. A patient comes with a seizure disorder, convulsions, and sitting in Madras, I make a brilliant diagnosis 2,800 miles away, with a patient 2,800 miles away, and I prescribe a tablet. And that stops there. The poor villager does not have A, the money to buy the tablet, B, the pharmacy which is in that town does not stock the tablet, or C, I think somebody comes to me with I give a teleconsultation for a headache, and I think there's a possibility of there being a problem in the brain, and I say I want a CT scan done. It's very easy for me to say CT scan, but in the real world, where does he go for a CT scan? So we are convinced that healthcare in this country will never ever take off or achieve universal standards unless there is universal health insurance. A very simple way, I mean it's not simple, but a doable way is with 1,200 million Indians, I refuse to believe that even below poverty line, even the poorest of the poor cannot afford to pay 1 rupee a day or 50 paisa a day in today's cost of living. If we can devise some sort of collection mechanism so that not more than 25% of the cost is spent in collection, theoretically we will be able to collect 1,000 million rupees a day. And you give me 1,000 million rupees a day, I will guarantee you bone marrow transplant and heart transplant and brain transplant if necessary for every one of the creatures here. So what we lack in this country is cross subsidy. Unless there is insurance, unless the common man gets He cannot afford. I cannot, God forbid it, tomorrow if I fall ill, I don't think I'll be able to afford it because modern medicine is very expensive. So all this has to be integrated. It's not a question of tele-diagnosis. At the moment, what we are doing is only a what shall I say, a system where I decide whether this patient should go to a secondary level hospital or a tertiary level hospital or can continue there. So it's not as simple as that. There are many, many problems. But this, according to me, and I've been involved in this for the last 7 years, the problem is not technology. It is still a resistance, a positive resistance, including the medical community, for making an attempt to diagnose and treat people from a distance. So unless this changes and the public at large are convinced that seeing a doctor on a giant screen is as good as touching him with the hand, things are not going to take off. And even today, I've had very senior Indian administrative service officers, brigadiers and generals of the armed forces who are willing to travel 1,800 miles to physically directly see a doctor rather than see him on a giant screen. So it's not so simple. See, the issue is much more complex. And we are trying to change a system which has been in practice for the last 5,000 years. It will take time, but we are very confident we will sooner or later achieve the critical mass which is essential for a takeoff. Yes, sir. Can you please announce yourself so that we know who you are?
I'm Ashok Sood from Tata Teleservices. My question is directed towards Dr. Lavanyan. Doctor, you had said that the real solutions are government support, PPP, that's public-private participation, and self-sustaining business plans. I'm asking a very simplistic question. If these are the real solutions, what are the barriers just now that you see for the last two, that is PPP and the self-sustaining business plans?
Thank you so very much for the question. The way I see it, the barriers are the uniqueness of the product. The basic thing is, although we do have understanding that the government wants to help, the government is positive about it, although we do have this public-private partnership, we do have entrepreneurial schemes, we have very good business plans, every plan doesn't apply in the, in the same way. So when this kind of a problem occurs, what actually happens is that people lose faith very easily. And then they tend to go into areas which, let's say, yields better percentage as far as returns are concerned. Let us accept one thing, that telemedicine is not going to give you fantastic returns. We are talking of sustainable plans where there would be profits, but it wouldn't be a huge profit like, say, the movie industry or maybe the IT industry as such. However, there are profits, but because of the difficulty in implementations, as I mentioned in my slides, and all these other difficulties put together, people tend to say, okay, since it's so difficult, let me get into something else. Also, please note that the other end, that is the medical end, where the doctors are in hospitals, they also need to gear up to be able to support such services. Many a time, this also becomes a barrier because doctors are not willing, as Dr. Ganapathy so well put up so well, to take part in these services, and it takes a lot of convincing. So till we overcome these barriers, I don't really see the numbers increasing so fast. I don't really see people taking it up. But like he rightly said, we are getting there.